The evening arrives in Harbor Row the way it always does, with a slow dimming of the sky that happens so gradually you might not notice the exact moment when afternoon becomes dusk. The light changes from something bright and clear to something softer, something that seems to rest gently on the surfaces of things rather than illuminating them sharply. You find yourself standing at the beginning of the cobblestone path that runs along the water's edge, and there is no particular reason to hurry, no destination that calls urgently, only the quiet invitation of the harbor itself and the slow rhythm of the evening settling in around you. The cobblestones beneath your feet are uneven in that comfortable, familiar way that speaks of many years and many footsteps. Each stone is slightly different from the next, worn smooth in some places and rough in others, and as you begin to walk, you notice how your steps create a gentle, irregular pattern of sound that blends with the other sounds of the harbor. The sound of your footsteps is soft and muted, each one a small declaration of presence that echoes briefly against the buildings before being absorbed into the general quietness. There is something deeply satisfying about this sound, something that connects you to all the people who have walked this path before you, their steps wearing away at the stone over decades and centuries, creating the smooth surface that now supports your weight. The air is cool, but not cold, carrying with it the clean, salt-touched scent of the sea and something else, something like old wood and rope and the particular smell that belongs only to places where water meets land and boats rest quietly against wooden docks. This scent enters your lungs with each breath, filling you with the essence of Harbor Row, and there is something calming about it, something that makes your shoulders relax and your breathing deepen without conscious effort. The salt in the air is subtle but persistent, a mineral taste that you can almost feel on your tongue, and mixed with it is the smell of cedar wood from the old docks, a warm, resinous scent that speaks of trees and forests and the patient work of time and weather. Above you, the sky is beginning to show its evening colors, though these are not the dramatic reds and oranges of a sunset that demands attention. Instead, the sky is painted in soft layers of pale amber and gentle gray, colors that seem to blur into one another without clear boundaries. And as you walk, you find yourself glancing up occasionally to watch the slow deepening of these hues. The clouds, what few there are, move so slowly across the sky that you can barely perceive their movement, and they are painted underneath with the same amber glow that now touches the tops of the buildings along the harbor. These clouds are thin and wispy, stretched across the sky like pulled cotton, and they catch the last light of the sun in a way that makes them seem to glow from within. The shops and houses that line the waterfront are beginning to close for the day, their windows dimming one by one as the people inside complete their quiet routines and prepare for the evening ahead. A few windows still show warm light from within, but even these seem muted and soft, as if the light itself is tired and ready to rest. The shadows these windows cast are long and gentle, stretching across the cobblestones in shapes that shift slightly when you move, and there is something peaceful about these shadows, something that makes you feel that everything is exactly as it should be. Through one window you can see the silhouette of someone moving slowly, perhaps preparing dinner or tidying up, and the sight of this ordinary activity is somehow comforting, a reminder that life continues in its simple patterns, that there is comfort in routine and repetition. As you continue along the path, you become aware of the water itself, dark and calm and moving with a rhythm that is both constant and ever so slightly varied. The harbor is protected from the open sea by a long stone breakwater, and so the water here is gentle, rising and falling in a slow, steady pulse that you can hear as a soft lapping sound against the wooden posts of the docks and the hulls of the boats. This sound is everywhere around you, not loud but persistent, a quiet reminder that the water is always there, always moving in its ancient, unhurried way. The lapping has a rhythm to it, though not a perfectly regular one, more like breathing than like a metronome, and listening to it you feel your own breathing begin to synchronize with it, slowing to match the patient rise and fall of the tide. The water makes other sounds too, sounds that you notice as you walk and as your ears become more attuned to the subtle symphony of the harbor. There is the gentle slapping of small waves against the flat sides of the docks, a sound that is slightly sharper than the lapping but still soft, still part of the overall quietness. There is the sound of water moving around the pilings that support the piers, a soft gurgling and sucking sound as the tide shifts and the water finds new paths through the forest of wooden posts. And there is the sound of water itself, just the presence of it, a kind of background hum that is less a sound than a feeling, a sense of fluid movement and patient power that underlies everything else. The boats themselves are still now, their work done for the day. Some are fishing boats, their decks empty and clean, their nets folded and stored below. Others are smaller vessels, personal boats that belong to people who live in Harbor Row and use them for quiet afternoon sails or early morning. Fishing trips that are more about being on the water than catching anything in particular. These boats are painted in colors that have faded gently over time, soft blues and whites and grays that seem to belong to the harbor itself, and as you pass them, you notice how they move ever so slightly with the water, rising and falling in that same slow rhythm, their hulls creaking softly with each small movement. The creaking of the boat is one of the most soothing sounds in the harbor, a sound that speaks of wood and water and the constant gentle pressure of the tide. Each boat has its own particular creak, its own voice, and together they create a chorus of wooden sighs and groans that is somehow musical in its randomness. Some boats creak higher, some lower, some quickly and some slowly, and the sounds overlap and interact in ways that are never quite the same twice. This creaking is not a sound of distress, but of settling, of finding balance, of boats and water working together in the way they have worked together for as long as humans have gone to sea. There is rigging on some of the boats, thin metal cables and ropes that run from the masts to various points on the decks, and these make a sound when the breeze touches them, a soft metallic clinking that is irregular and musical in a simple way. This clinking is one of the signature sounds of any harbor, a sound that sailors know well, and it carries across the water with a clarity that seems surprising given how soft it is. Each piece of rigging has its own pitch, its own particular tone, and when the breeze picks up even slightly, the harbor fills with this gentle metallic music, dozens of boats all contributing their own notes to the composition. The sound of the rigging against the masts is punctuated occasionally by the deeper sound of a boat shifting on its mooring, the thick rope that holds it in place creaking and stretching as the boat moves with the water. These moorings are strong and old, tested by countless storms and tides, and their sounds are reassuring, suggesting strength and security and the patient endurance of things well made. When a mooring rope creaks, the sound travels down into the water and up through the boat's hull, creating a complex resonance that you can hear and almost feel, a vibration that speaks of connections and holding and the refusal to drift away. You are in no hurry. There is nowhere you need to be and nothing you need to do, and so you walk slowly, your pace matching the pace of the evening itself. Sometimes you pause to look at a particular boat or to watch the way the light reflects off the water, creating patterns that shift and change so slowly that you cannot quite track their movement. The water is dark now, a deep gray that is almost black in places, and the light from the sky sits on its surface in a way that makes it look soft and almost solid, as if you could reach out and touch it. The reflections on the water are gentle and diffused, not sharp like they would be in bright sunlight, and they seem to shimmer and breathe with the movement of the water beneath them. The path curves gently as it follows the edge of the harbor, and as you walk, the view changes gradually, revealing different angles of the same peaceful scene. Behind you, the buildings of Harbor Row are becoming less distinct as the light fades, their details softening into simple shapes against the darkening sky. Ahead of you, the pier extends out into the water, a long wooden structure that reaches toward the center of the harbor, and you find yourself drawn toward it. Though there is no urgency in this movement, only a gentle inclination to continue walking in that direction. The temperature is dropping slightly as the evening deepens, and you notice this in the way the air feels against your skin, cool and fresh and carrying a little more weight than it did earlier. This coolness is not uncomfortable, but pleasant, the kind of temperature that makes you aware of your own warmth and the slight contrast between your body and the air around it. The cool air touches your face and hands, the parts of you that are exposed, and the sensation is refreshing and somehow clarifying, as if the coolness is washing away the residue of the day, leaving you clean and present and ready for the evening's peace. You might pull your jacket a little closer or slip your hands into your pockets, small gestures that are automatic and require no thought. The fabric of your jacket is soft and warm, familiar against your skin, and your pockets are warm havens for your hands, sheltered from the cool air. These small adjustments to the temperature are satisfying in their simplicity, tiny acts of self-care that connect you to your body and its needs, grounding you in the physical present even as your mind begins to settle into the quietness of the evening. As you walk, you become aware of your own breathing, the way it matches the rhythm of your steps and the rhythm of the water. Each breath in brings the salt air deep into your lungs, and each breath out is a soft release, a letting go of whatever small thoughts or concerns might have been occupying your mind. The breathing happens automatically, requires no attention, and yet paying attention to it reveals its complexity and its beauty. The way your chest rises and falls, the way the air moves in and out of your body, the way each breath is both exactly like all the others, and also unique, unrepeatable, happening only once in all of time. There is something about walking like this, slowly and without purpose, that allows the mind to settle, to become quiet in the same way that the harbor is quiet, not empty of sound, but filled instead with gentle, undemanding sounds that ask nothing of you. Your thoughts, which earlier in the day might have been busy and insistent, demanding attention and generating anxiety or excitement or concern, have now become softer, less urgent, more like clouds drifting across the sky than like tasks requiring action. Thoughts arise and you notice them, and then they drift away again, and this process happens over and over without any effort on your part. A natural settling that comes from the combination of walking and breathing and being present in this peaceful place. The pier is closer now, and you can see its details more clearly. The wooden planks are weathered and gray, smoothed by years of footsteps and weather, and they are wide enough that you can walk down the center without concern. The wood has that particular color that comes from long exposure to sun and salt water, a silvery gray that is beautiful in its simplicity, and the grain of the wood is raised slightly, creating a texture that you know will feel good under your feet. The sides of the pier are edged with simple railings, just wooden posts connected by horizontal beams, and these railings cast long shadows across the planks, creating patterns of light and dark that repeat all the way down the length of the pier. You step onto the pier, and the sound of your footsteps changes slightly, becoming more hollow and resonant as they echo off the water below. The pier is solid and sturdy, and it barely moves even though it floats on the water, held in place by thick wooden pilings that descend into the dark depths below. As you walk out along the pier, the town behind you becomes more distant, and the sense of space around you grows larger, as if you are moving out into something vast and open, even though the harbor itself is enclosed and protected. Each step takes you further from the shore, further into the embrace of the evening and the water, and with each step you feel more separate from the concerns of land and more connected to the timeless rhythms of the sea. The sensation of walking on the pier is different from walking on the cobblestones. The wood has a slight give to it, a flexibility that stone does not have, and you can feel this give with each step, a gentle yielding and then returning that is almost like walking on something alive. The pier absorbs your weight and distributes it down through the pilings into the water, and there is something reassuring about this, about the way the structure holds you safely above the dark water, allowing you to be out here in the middle of the harbor without being in the water itself. There are a few other people in Harbor Row this evening, but they are far away and moving slowly, each absorbed in their own quiet routines. A figure walks along a distant dock, their form indistinct in the fading light, moving with the same unhurried pace that seems to characterize everything in Harbor Row this evening. Someone sits on the steps of a building near the water, looking out at nothing in particular, just sitting and being present, and you feel a sense of kinship with this person, even though you cannot see their face or know anything about them. These presences are comforting in their distance, reminders that you are not alone, but also not required to interact, free to remain in your own quiet space as you continue your slow walkout along the pier. The water beneath the pier is dark and still, and as you walk, you occasionally glance down through the gaps between the planks to see it moving slowly below, its surface occasionally catching a bit of reflected light. The gaps between the planks are wide enough to see through, but narrow enough that there is no sense of danger, and looking down through them gives you a direct connection to the water, a reminder that you are walking above it, supported by the pier but surrounded by this vast liquid presence. Small fish sometimes swim in these sheltered spaces beneath the piers, though you cannot see them now in the dim light, and there are sometimes crabs that move sideways across the pilings, but these creatures are going about their own evening routines, unseen and untroubled. The water makes soft sounds as it moves around the pilings, sounds that are different from the sounds it makes against the hulls of boats or the sides of docks. Against the pilings, the water sounds more intimate, more immediate, as if you are hearing it in a more private conversation with the wood. There is a soft lapping and a gentle sucking sound as the water rises and falls, finding its level around these vertical obstacles. And there is also a sound like whispering, a soft rush and sigh as small currents move through the forest of pilings, channeled and redirected by these wooden posts. Halfway out along the pier, you pause and turn to look back at Harbor Row. The town is beautiful in this light, its buildings soft and indistinct, its windows glowing with warm amber light that seems to pulse gently, though this is only the effect of your own eyes adjusting to the darkness. Smoke rises from a few chimneys, thin white streams that ascend straight up into the still air before dissipating into nothing. And the sight of this smoke is comforting, suggesting warm fires in warm rooms and people settling in for the evening. The whole scene has the quality of something half-remembered, a place that exists in memory or dream, familiar and comforting, and slightly unreal. The buildings of Harbor Row are mostly 2 or 3 stories tall, built close together in the way of old coastal towns, and they lean slightly toward each other as if in conversation, their roof lines irregular and interesting against the sky. Some buildings have widows' walks on top, small platforms where people once watched for returning ships, and these platforms are empty now but still somehow watchful. Patient structures that have seen many evenings like this one, many slow transitions from day to night. The buildings are painted in muted colors, or perhaps the colors have been muted by the fading light, and they blend together into a harmonious whole that is pleasing to look at without being dramatic or demanding. You turn back toward the end of the pier and continue walking. Your steps have slowed even more now, each one deliberate and unhurried, and you notice how your body has begun to relax, your shoulders dropping, your jaw unclenching, small tensions releasing without conscious effort. The evening is doing its work, inviting you into its particular kind of peace, and you are accepting this invitation simply by being here, by walking slowly and breathing steadily, and allowing your thoughts to drift like the boats on their moorings. The relaxation that comes from being here is not something you have to create or achieve, but something that happens naturally when you allow yourself to slow down, to match your pace to the pace of the water and the sky and the gentle ending of the day. Your muscles, which may have been tight or tense earlier, are beginning to soften and loosen, and you can feel this softening spreading through your body like warmth spreading through cold hands. Your neck relaxes, your shoulders drop another inch, your arms hang loosely at your sides, and even your legs, which are still walking, are doing so with less effort, less tension, just a gentle forward motion that requires almost no thought. The end of the pier is marked by a slightly wider section, a small platform with benches facing out toward the water. As you approach this area, you see that one of the benches is empty, and you feel drawn to it, to the idea of sitting for a while and simply watching the evening deepen into night. The bench is made of the same weathered wood as the pier itself, wide planks that have been worn smooth and are still holding the faintest warmth from the sun that touched them earlier in the day. You sit down slowly, settling into the bench, and the wood is solid and comfortable beneath you. The backrest is at just the right angle, allowing you to lean back slightly without strain, and you find a position that feels easy and natural, one that you could maintain for a long time without discomfort. Your hands rest on your lap or on the bench beside you, and your feet are flat on the wooden planks of the pier, and everything about this position feels right and settled. The warmth of the wood seeps into your body, a gentle heat that is pleasant against the coolness of the air, and you notice how good it feels to sit after walking, how your body appreciates this rest, even though the walking was not strenuous. From here, at the end of the pier, the view is different than it was along the path. You are surrounded by water on 3 sides now, and the harbor stretches out before you, its surface dark and smooth like glass that has been breathed upon. The water has a quality of stillness that is almost absolute, broken only by the gentlest of movements. Tiny ripples that spread in slow circles from invisible causes, and the surface reflects what little light remains in the sky, creating a mirror effect that makes it seem as if you are suspended between 2 darknesses, one above and one below. The far shore is visible as a low dark line against the sky, and on that shore are a few scattered lights, small points of warmth that seem very far away. Between you and that distant shore is only water, vast and calm and moving with that same slow rhythm that you have been hearing all along. And now that you are sitting still, this rhythm seems more apparent, more insistent in its gentleness. You can feel it as much as hear it, a pulse that seems to come from the water itself, from the deep places where the tide is generated and controlled by forces far larger than anything human, the moon and the sun and the rotation of the earth itself. The sky above you has darkened considerably, though it is not yet fully night. There is still a band of pale amber light along the western horizon, a last reminder of the sun that has now sunk below the edge of the world. And this light creates a subtle glow that touches the undersides of what few clouds remain. The rest of the sky is deepening into shades of blue-gray and violet-gray, colors that have no names but which you recognize as belonging to this particular time of evening, this threshold between day and night. These colors are soothing to look at, gentle and soft and gradually darkening, and watching them change is like watching a very slow dissolve, one scene fading into another so gradually that you cannot mark the moment of transition. Stars are beginning to appear, though only the brightest ones are visible yet. You notice one star directly overhead, a steady point of light that does not flicker or waver, and as you watch, another star becomes visible near it, and then another, as if the sky is slowly revealing its hidden depths. These stars are patient and constant, and they will be there all night, wheeling slowly overhead in patterns that have repeated since before Harbor Row existed, since before anyone was here to notice them. Looking at these stars, you feel a sense of connection to all the people who have ever looked at them, sailors and fishermen and travelers, all seeing these same points of light and finding in them whatever meaning or comfort or navigation they needed. There is a lighthouse somewhere beyond the harbor mouth, though you cannot see the structure itself from where you sit. What you can see is its light, a steady beam that sweeps across the water in a slow, measured circle. The beam appears in the distance, a band of pale light that illuminates the surface of the water for a moment, revealing its texture and movement, and then the beam continues its rotation, moving away and leaving that patch of water in darkness again. This happens over and over, a cycle that takes perhaps 30 seconds or perhaps a minute. And there is something deeply soothing about this repetition, this patient lighthouse doing its work whether anyone is watching or not. The lighthouse beam is mesmerizing in its regularity and its gentle, inevitable progression. You watch it make one complete rotation, appearing in the distance as a faint glow, growing brighter as it approaches, sweeping past your position with its light spread across the water like a searching hand, and then fading again as it moves away. The beam has a slightly yellow quality to its light, warm rather than cold, and when it illuminates the water, you can see details that are invisible in the general darkness, small waves and ripples in the texture of the surface, all revealed for just a moment before being hidden again. You watch the lighthouse beam make several complete rotations, each one exactly like the last, and you find yourself beginning to anticipate its return, noticing the moment when it appears at the edge of your vision and following it as it sweeps across the water toward you and then past you and away again. The light never reaches the pier where you sit, but it comes close enough that you can see the individual ripples and small waves it illuminates, can see the way the water catches the light and throws it back in scattered reflections. This watching becomes a kind of meditation, your attention focused softly on the beam's rotation, your mind emptying of other thoughts as you fall into the rhythm of light and darkness, over and over in perfect repetition. The sound of the water is constant and unchanging, that soft lapping against the pilings of the pier and the hulls of boats, and occasionally you hear the creak of wood as something shifts slightly, a boat moving on its mooring or the pier itself settling into a new position. These sounds are small and non-intrusive, and they blend into the general quietness in a way that makes them part of the piece rather than interruptions of it. Each sound is like a gentle reminder that you are not in silence but in quietness, that the world continues its small movements and activities even as everything settles into evening rest. The creaking of the wood has its own kind of music, a slow melody played on instruments made of fiber and grain, responding to pressure and release, to the constant gentle push of the water and the pull of the tide. Some creaks are quick and high, almost like squeaks, while others are long and low, groaning sounds that speak of weight and strain and the patient endurance of materials under stress. Together, these sounds create a background texture that is both random and somehow organized, a natural composition that needs no conductor or score, but simply emerges from the physical facts of wood and water and time. Your breathing has slowed to match the pace of everything around you, deep and steady, and requiring no attention. The cool air moves in and out of your lungs with a rhythm that feels effortless, natural, and with each breath you feel more settled, more present in this moment, and less concerned with anything that came before, or anything that might come after. There is only this bench, this pier, this water, this sky, and the slow deepening of the evening into night. The air you breathe in is clean and cold and full of salt, and it fills your lungs completely, expanding them. And then the exhale comes naturally, a complete release that empties you and leaves you ready for the next breath. The sensation of breathing becomes more noticeable as you sit quietly, more present in your awareness. You feel the air entering your nostrils, cool against the sensitive membranes there, and you feel it traveling down into your chest, filling spaces, and you feel the slight pause at the top of the breath before the exhale begins, and then you feel the air leaving, warm now from being inside your body, carrying with it whatever it has collected from your lungs. This process is happening constantly, automatically, and yet paying attention to it reveals its complexity and its perfection, the way your body knows exactly what to do without any conscious direction from you. The warmth from the bench is fading now as the wood releases the last of the heat it absorbed during the day, but this fading is so gradual that you barely notice it, and in any case the coolness that replaces it is not uncomfortable. You are dressed appropriately for the evening, and the temperature is mild, and there is no wind to speak of, only the gentlest movement of air that occasionally touches your face or stirs your hair in a way that is barely perceptible. This slight movement of air is refreshing rather than chilling, a gentle caress that makes you aware of your face and head as distinct from the rest of your body, and it carries with it more of that harbor scent, concentrated and pure. Time passes, though you are not keeping track of it. Minutes or perhaps longer spent simply sitting and breathing and watching the water and the sky. The stars are more numerous now, filling the spaces between the brighter stars with fainter points of light, creating patterns and shapes that ancient people saw as pictures, but which to you are simply beautiful in their scattered randomness. The patterns are there if you want to see them, connect the dot pictures drawn across the dome of the sky, but they are also just points of light, each one a sun perhaps with its own planets and its own impossible distances, and both ways of seeing are equally valid and equally beautiful. The Milky Way is beginning to appear as a faint band of light across one portion of the sky, though it is still too early for it to be really distinct, and you know that later, when the night is fully dark, it will be more visible, a river of stars flowing overhead. For now it is just a suggestion, a slight brightening in one area of the sky that might be clouds or might be stars or might be something else entirely, and this uncertainty is part of the experience, part of the slow revelation that happens as the evening deepens. The lighthouse beam continues its patient rotation, appearing and disappearing and appearing again, and you have stopped actively watching it, allowing it to simply be there in your peripheral awareness, a regular pulse that marks the passage of time in a way that is somehow both present and unimportant. The beam sweeps, the water laps, the boats creak, and these rhythms overlay each other in a gentle complexity that asks nothing of you. You do not need to understand these rhythms or analyze them or do anything with them. You simply experience them, allowing them to wash over you and through you like waves washing over rocks on a shore. Behind you, Harbor Row is settling into its night mode. Most of the windows are dark now, and the few that still show light are dimmer than they were, as if the people inside are preparing for sleep, or at least for the quiet activities of evening, reading perhaps, or sitting in warm kitchens with cups of tea, or simply resting in the way that people do when the day's work is done and there is nothing left to accomplish. The town feels peaceful and safe, a place where everyone knows the rhythms and routines, where everything happens as it should and as it always has. You notice that a fine mist is beginning to form on the water, though it is so faint and so gradual in its appearance that you cannot say exactly when it began. This mist rises from the surface of the harbor in wisps and tendrils, thickening slowly, softening the already soft lines of the distant shore and the boats and the edges of the pier itself. The mist is cool and slightly damp, and it carries with it the concentrated essence of the harbor's smell, salt and wood and water and age, all mixed together in a way that is both complex and simple. The mist touches your skin, settling in tiny droplets that are almost too small to feel individually, but which collectively create a slight dampness on your face and hands. This moisture is cool and clean, and there is something purifying about it, as if the mist is washing away the residue of the day, leaving you fresh and new. Your skin absorbs this moisture, or perhaps it just sits on the surface. You cannot tell. But either way, the sensation is pleasant, a gentle coolness that reminds you of the living quality of the air and water around you. As the mist thickens, the lighthouse beam becomes more visible in its passage through the air, a solid-looking shaft of light that cuts through the soft gray atmosphere, and you watch as it rotates through the mist, creating patterns and effects that change slightly each time the beam passes. Sometimes the mist is thicker in one area and thinner in another, and the light illuminates these variations, showing you the invisible movements of air and water vapor, the slow swirling and drifting that happens at the meeting place of water and sky. The beam seems almost tangible as it moves through the mist, almost as if you could reach out and touch it. Feel its light as a physical substance, though you know this is an illusion created by the way the light scatters through the water droplets suspended in the air. The world is becoming more dreamlike now, the hard edges of things disappearing into softness, the clear distinctions between water and sky and mist beginning to blur. You can still see the horizon, but it is less distinct than it was, more of a gradual transition from the dark water to the slightly lighter sky, and the stars, which were bright and sharp earlier, are now softer, their light diffused by the moisture in the air. Some stars have disappeared entirely, hidden behind the thickening mist, while others remain visible as fuzzy points of light that seem to pulse and waver slightly. And this wavering is soothing to watch, a gentle motion that has no urgency or direction. You continue to sit, making no move to leave, feeling no impulse to be anywhere other than exactly where you are. The bench beneath you is solid and supportive, and your body has found its comfortable position, requiring no adjustments. Your hands rest lightly, your feet are still, your breathing continues its slow and steady rhythm, and your thoughts, which earlier might have been active and numerous, have simplified into a kind of gentle awareness that observes without analyzing, that experiences without judging. The feeling of sitting here is one of complete ease, of being exactly where you belong in this moment. There is no tension in your body, no tightness or discomfort, only a sense of being held and supported by the bench and by the evening itself. Your spine is aligned and relaxed, your head balanced easily on your neck, your limbs heavy and still. And all of this feels natural and right, as if this is how you were meant to be, sitting quietly at the end of a pier while the night deepens around you. A boat somewhere in the harbor shifts on its mooring, and you hear the soft sound of water moving around its hull, a gentle slapping that lasts for a few seconds and then subsides. The sound comes from somewhere off to your left, but you do not turn to look, content to simply register the sound and let it pass. Everything is passing now, every moment flowing into the next without pause or disruption, and you are part of this flow, sitting still, while the evening moves around you and through you. The sound of the boat shifting reminds you of all the boats in the harbor, dozens of them perhaps, each one floating and moving in its own small way, each one held by its mooring but still free to move with the water. These boats are resting now, empty and still, but they carry within them the potential for movement, for voyages, for the work of fishing, or the pleasure of sailing. And this potential is part of their presence even when they are at rest. That the boats are patient, waiting for morning, waiting for the people who will use them, and there is something deeply restful about this waiting, this patient existence that requires nothing and expects nothing. The temperature continues its gradual drop, and you feel the coolness more distinctly now, but it is not unpleasant. It is the coolness of a summer evening by the water, fresh and clean, and it makes you aware of your own warmth, the steady heat that your body generates, and the slight contrast between this warmth and the cool air creates a sensation that is both grounding and somehow comforting, a reminder that you are alive and present and breathing. Your body is working quietly to maintain its temperature, adjusting blood flow and metabolism in ways you cannot feel or control. And this automatic regulation is another thing to trust, another thing that is happening perfectly without your attention or effort. Far out beyond the harbor mouth, beyond where you can see, is the open ocean, vast and deep and moving with its own ancient rhythms. But here in Harbor Row, the water is protected and calm, and the boats rest easy on their moorings, and the town sleeps peacefully under the watching stars. You are part of this peace, contributing to it simply by your stillness, your quiet presence at the end of the pier, watching and breathing and being. The mist is thicker now, not dense enough to be called fog, but substantial enough that you feel its presence on your skin. Tiny droplets of moisture that settle so lightly you barely notice them individually, but which collectively create a slight dampness on your face and hands. This moisture is cool and clean, and it carries with it that same harbor scent. Intensified now, more present, and you breathe it in slowly, letting it fill your lungs, this essence of Harbor Row, this particular combination of elements that exists nowhere else in quite this way. The lighthouse beam seems to be moving more slowly now, though this is probably just a trick of perception, your own sense of time stretching and slowing to match the evening's pace. Each rotation takes longer, or seems to, and the beam itself appears thicker and more substantial as it cuts through the mist. A pillar of light that exists for a moment and then rotates away, leaving behind only darkness and the faint glow of stars. You find yourself thinking about nothing in particular, or perhaps you are not thinking at all, but simply experiencing the sensation of sitting, of breathing, of being present in this moment. Thoughts arise occasionally, small observations or memories or fragments of ideas, but they do not stick or demand attention. They float up into your awareness like bubbles rising through water, and then pop or drift away, leaving no trace, and you return to the simple experience of being here, now at the end of the pier, surrounded by water and mist, and the slow deepening of night. This mental quiet is deeply restful, more restful even than the physical relaxation of your body. Your mind, which spends so much of its time busy with thoughts and concerns and plans, has found a place of rest, a state of being that requires no thinking, no analyzing, no problem solving. You are simply present, aware of your surroundings but not engaged with them in an active way, witnessing without participating, existing without effort. This state is not something you can force or create through effort. It is something that arises naturally when you allow yourself to be still, to stop trying to do or achieve or become anything, and simply be. The stars continue to emerge, more and more of them becoming visible as the sky darkens, and you notice that you can now see some of the fainter stars that were invisible earlier. Small points of light that require a soft focus to perceive, that disappear if you look directly at them, but reappear when you look slightly to the side. The sky is filling with these lights, thousands of them, millions perhaps, all of them so far away that their light has traveled for years or centuries or longer to reach your eyes, and yet here they are, present and real and beautiful in their distant coldness. A bird calls somewhere in the darkness, perhaps a gull or perhaps something else, and the sound is lonely and beautiful, and somehow perfect for this moment. The call echoes slightly across the water, and then fades, and there is no response, no answer, only the continuation of the water's gentle lapping and the distant rotation of the lighthouse beam and the soft whisper of the mist as it rises from the harbor. The bird's call is a reminder that you are not alone in the evening, that other lives continue their patterns around you, but it is also a reminder of solitude, of the particular quality of being alone in a peaceful place, and both of these feelings exist together without contradiction. You realize that you have been sitting for quite some time now, though you have no clear sense of how long. Time has lost its usual markers, its divisions into minutes and hours, and has become instead a continuous flow, unmarked and unmeasured, important only in the sense that it is passing and carrying you with it, gently, slowly deeper into the evening and toward the fullness of night. This loss of time is liberating rather than concerning, a release from the need to track and measure and account for every moment, and you surrender to it gladly, letting time be what it is without trying to capture or control it. Your eyes have adjusted fully to the darkness now, and you can see more than you could earlier, though what you see is mostly shadows and soft shapes rather than clear details. The water is very dark, almost black, and it reflects the sky in a way that makes it seem as if you are sitting between two identical darknesses, one above and one below, with only the thin line of the horizon to separate them. But this separation is becoming less distinct, the horizon blurring into the mist, and soon you sense the distinction will disappear entirely, and there will be only a single seamless darkness that surrounds you on all sides. The boats have become invisible now, or nearly so, their shapes absorbed into the general darkness, though you can still hear them occasionally, small creaks and shifts as they move with the water. You know they are there, spread across the harbor in their usual positions, each one secured to its mooring, each one safe and still and waiting for morning when they will be used again. But for now they are resting, and you are resting with them, your own thoughts and concerns moored and quiet, needing nothing, going nowhere. The bench is cool beneath you now, all of its daytime warmth long since radiated away into the evening air, but you do not mind this coolness. It is part of the experience, part of the gradual transition from day to night, from warmth to coolness, from light to darkness, and you accept it without resistance. adjusting slightly in your posture to accommodate the change, but not feeling any need to leave or to seek warmth elsewhere. Your body is generating enough warmth to keep you comfortable, and the coolness of the bench and the air is not enough to overcome this warmth, only enough to create a pleasant contrast, a reminder of the boundary between yourself and the world around you. The mist continues to rise and thicken, moving in slow, invisible currents across the surface of the water, and you watch its movements and the way the lighthouse beam illuminates it differently with each rotation. Sometimes the beam passes through mist that is thin and wispy, and the light seems almost to disappear into it. Other times the beam catches mist that is thicker, more substantial, and the light becomes visible as a solid form, a column that you could almost believe you could reach out and touch, though you know it would pass through your hand like air. You close your eyes for a moment, not to sleep, but simply to experience the evening through your other senses. With your eyes closed, the sound of the water becomes more present, more insistent, and you can hear subtle variations in its rhythm that you did not notice before. The lapping is not perfectly regular, but varies slightly in volume and speed, sometimes a little faster, sometimes a little slower, sometimes louder, sometimes softer, and these variations create a kind of natural music, unpredictable, and yet somehow perfectly ordered. The sound of the water against the pilings is particularly clear with your eyes closed, a soft gurgling and slapping that speaks of movement and presence, of the constant patient pressure of the tide. You can hear layers in this sound, the main pulse of the waves against the wood, and underneath that smaller sounds, drips and trickles and the soft suction of water moving through narrow spaces. All of these sounds together create a complex texture that is beautiful in its randomness, a composition that needs no composer but emerges naturally from the physical facts of water and wood and motion. The smell of the harbor is stronger with your eyes closed, or perhaps you are simply paying more attention to it. Salt and wood and fish and rope and tar, and all the other smells that accumulate in a place where people work with boats and water, all of these blend together into a scent that is distinctly Harbor Row, that could be nowhere else. And breathing this scent is like breathing in the essence of the place itself, all its history and its purpose and its patient existence at the edge of the sea. The scent enters your lungs and becomes part of you, absorbed into your blood and carried throughout your body, and in this way you take Harbor Row inside yourself, making it part of your own physical being. You open your eyes again slowly, and the darkness seems somehow deeper than it was before, though this might just be the effect of having had them closed. The stars are brilliant now, scattered across the entire dome of the sky, in patterns that would take a lifetime to learn and name, and the Milky Way is clearly visible, a river of light that flows from one horizon to the other, dividing the sky into two unequal halves. Looking at the Milky Way, you try to comprehend the distances involved, the billions of stars that create this band of light, the vast gulf of space that separates them from each other and from you, but the numbers are too large to grasp, and so you simply appreciate the beauty of it, the visual fact of this river of light flowing across the night sky. The lighthouse beam continues its rotation, patient and unstoppable, marking time in a way that is both mechanical and somehow alive, and you have fallen into the rhythm of it now, your awareness rising slightly each time the beam approaches, and then settling again as it passes, a gentle pulse that echoes the pulse of your own heart, your own breathing, your own slow and steady existence in this moment. The beam is hypnotic in its regularity, and watching it or not watching it, but just being aware of it, creates a kind of trance state, a relaxed alertness that is both present and somehow distant, both here and somewhere else. The mist is very thick now, not quite fog but approaching it, and the far shore has disappeared entirely, absorbed into the soft gray-white atmosphere that surrounds you. Even the nearby boats are becoming indistinct, their shapes suggested rather than seen, dark forms that emerge briefly from the mist and then fade back into it. The pier itself seems to end just beyond where you sit, its far length invisible, as if you are sitting at the very edge of the known world, beyond which lies only mystery and softness, and the gentle movement of water and air. You feel very small sitting here at the end of the pier, surrounded by darkness and mist and the vast expanse of water and sky. And yet you also feel somehow held, contained, safe within the embrace of the evening and the harbor and the patient presence of Harbor Row behind you. There is nothing to fear in this smallness, nothing threatening in this vastness. Instead, there is a sense of being part of something larger, something that continues regardless of your presence or absence, something that simply is, without need for justification or explanation. Your breathing has become so slow and so deep that you barely notice it, each breath lasting for many seconds, filling your lungs completely and then emptying them completely, a cycle that repeats with absolute reliability, asking nothing of you, requiring no attention or effort. Your body knows how to breathe, has always known, and it continues to do so regardless of whether you pay attention. And so you allow your attention to drift away from even this basic function, trusting your body to continue its work while your mind settles into an even deeper state of rest. The night is complete now, or nearly so. The last traces of amber light have faded from the western horizon, and the sky is fully dark except for the stars and the faint glow of the Milky Way. The temperature has reached its low point for the evening, cool but not cold, perfect for sitting still, perfect for breathing, perfect for simply being present in this space and time without any need to do or think or become anything other than what you already are. A slight breeze stirs the mist, moving it in gentle swirls and patterns that are invisible to you, but which you sense in the way the moisture and the air shifts and changes, sometimes denser on your face, sometimes lighter, the droplets settling and then lifting again in response to movements of air that are too subtle to feel directly. This stirring of the mist creates changes in what you can see as well. Brief clearings where the stars become a little brighter, or the dark shape of a boat becomes a little more distinct before the mist closes in again, hiding and revealing in a slow rhythm that has no pattern you can discern. The breeze carries sounds with it, small sounds that come from far away, the distant creak of a door, perhaps, or the soft call of another bird, sounds that arrive and fade quickly, momentary visitors in the general quietness. These sounds are like messages from the world beyond the pier, reminders that life continues in other places, but they do not disturb the peace here, they only add to it, providing texture and depth to the silence. The lighthouse beam sweeps through the mist, appearing and disappearing and appearing again, and you have long since stopped counting its rotations or trying to measure the time between them. It simply is a constant presence in the night, a reminder that someone or something is watching, keeping vigil, ensuring that boats can find their way home even in the darkest hours. But there are no boats coming home tonight, no movement on the water except the gentle lapping of the waves and the slow rise of the tide, and the lighthouse watches over an empty sea, its beam passing again and again over water that holds no vessels, sees no one, illuminates nothing but mist and the dark surface of the harbor. You could sit here forever, you think, or rather the thought arises briefly and then fades, and you realize that you are not thinking in the usual sense at all anymore, but simply existing, aware and present, but without the usual commentary that accompanies awareness, without the constant stream of observations and judgments and plans that normally fills the mind. There is only the bench and the pier and the water and the sky and the slow breathing and the patient continuation of the evening into night. Harbor Row is silent behind you, all of its residents asleep or preparing for sleep. The town dark except for a handful of lights that glow softly in windows scattered here and there, small beacons of warmth and human presence in the darkness. These lights are like stars themselves, you think, or rather you observe this similarity without quite thinking it. Earthbound stars that shine with a different kind of light, but which serve a similar purpose, marking presence, suggesting warmth, providing orientation in the dark. Each lit window represents a life, a person, or a family going through their evening routines, and the sight of these windows is comforting, a reminder that you are part of a community even in your solitude. The mist is cold against your skin now, the moisture condensing and running in small droplets down your face. And you could wipe these droplets away, but you do not, allowing them to simply be there, part of the experience, part of the night. Everything is becoming part of everything else, the boundaries between yourself and the evening dissolving in the same way that the boundary between water and sky has dissolved, and you are not separate from this place, but part of it, breathing its air, touching its surfaces, existing within its particular combination of elements and conditions. Time continues to pass, unmarked and unmeasured, and the night deepens further still, if such a thing is possible. The darkness is complete now, total, broken only by the stars overhead and the sweeping beam of the lighthouse and the occasional soft glow of a window in Harbor Row. The darkness is not empty but full, rich with presence and possibility, and sitting within it you feel held and supported, as if the darkness itself were a substance, soft and gentle and infinitely patient. Your eyes are heavy now, though you are not quite ready to close them permanently, not quite ready to surrender to sleep. Instead, you let them rest half open, seeing without really looking, aware of light and shadow and movement, but not trying to make sense of any of it, not trying to identify or categorize or understand. Things simply are, existing in their own right, requiring nothing from you, and you exist among them. Another element in the evening's composition, no more or less important than the water or the mist or the patient rotation of the lighthouse beam. The water continues its gentle lapping, the boats continue their quiet creaking, the mist continues its slow rise and swirl, and all of these sounds and movements blend together into a single, continuous presence that surrounds you and fills the space between the pier and the sky. You are breathing this presence, touching it, existing within it, and it is existing within you. Each breath bringing more of it inside, each exhalation releasing it back into the evening where it mixes with the mist and the darkness and the cold salt air. The sensation of breathing has become almost dreamlike, each breath so slow and so deep that you lose track of where one ends and the next begins. The air moves in and out of your body like water moving in and out with the tide, a natural rhythm that has no beginning and no end. Only a continuous gentle exchange between inside and outside, between self and world. This breathing connects you to everything around you, to the air and the water and the mist, to the town behind you and the sea beyond. And in this connection there is a profound peace, a sense of belonging that requires no words or understanding. The lighthouse beam sweeps by again and again and again, each passage exactly like the last, and you have become part of this rhythm now, your own awareness rising and falling with the beam's rotation, a gentle pulse that requires no effort, that simply happens over and over, reliable and patient and somehow infinite in its repetition. The beam will continue all night, long after you have left the pier, long after you have found your way back to Harbor Row and into whatever warm room awaits you there, long after you have finally surrendered to sleep. The lighthouse does not sleep, does not rest, but continues its work throughout the darkness, watching and waiting and sending its light out across the empty water. You think about standing, about beginning the slow walk back along the pier to the cobblestone path, and then to wherever it is you are staying in Harbor Row. But the thought comes without any urgency, without any real intention, and it fades away again without your having moved. There is time for that later, time to rise and walk and return. For now there is only this sitting, this breathing, this being present at the end of the pier while the night continues around you and the stars wheel slowly overhead and the mist rises from the dark water. The coolness has settled deep into your bones now, but it is not uncomfortable, not something that requires action or correction. It is simply part of the evening, part of the experience, and you accept it as you have accepted everything else, without resistance, without judgment, allowing it to be exactly what it is. Your body knows how to maintain its warmth, how to balance the cold outside with the heat inside, and it does this work automatically, reliably, asking nothing of you. This automatic regulation is another thing to trust, another aspect of your body's wisdom that operates without your conscious involvement. The bench is very solid beneath you, immovable and patient, and you feel grateful for its presence. This simple structure of wood and nails that exists for no purpose except to provide a place to sit, to rest, to watch the evening deepen into night. Someone made this bench, you realize, though the thought is distant and unimportant. Someone cut the wood and shaped it and fitted the pieces together and set it here at the end of the pier, and that person is long gone now, but their work remains, serving its simple purpose, holding you as it has held countless others who have sat here over the years, watching this same water, breathing this same air, feeling this same peace. The stars are so numerous now that they seem to touch each other, filling every available space in the sky. And looking up at them, you feel both the vastness of space and the intimacy of this moment, the infinite and the particular existing together without contradiction. These stars have shone for billions of years, will continue to shine for billions more, and yet here you are in this one specific moment, at this one specific place, seeing them with your own eyes, and the moment is both insignificant and absolutely unique, both meaningless and full of meaning. The lighthouse beam passes again, illuminating a swirl of mist that creates patterns in the light, complex and beautiful and lasting only a moment before the beam moves on and the patterns dissolve back into darkness. You watch this happen, or rather you observe it without quite watching, your attention soft and diffused, taking in the whole scene without focusing on any particular part of it. And this way of seeing seems more appropriate to the evening than sharp attention would be, more in keeping with the gentle, undemanding nature of everything around you. Your hands are resting on the bench beside you, and you notice that they are cool to the touch, the skin slightly damp from the mist, and you notice this without any need to warm them, without any need to change anything. They are simply hands, resting, being, existing in this moment just as everything else exists. And there is a kind of democracy in this realization, all things equal and present and patient. Your hands have carried you through the day, have done whatever work they needed to do, and now they rest, and this rest is complete and uncomplicated. The tide is coming in. You realize, though, the change is so gradual that you cannot point to any single moment when you became aware of it. The water is slightly higher than it was when you first sat down. The lapping sounds slightly different in pitch and rhythm, and the boats are floating at a slightly different level against the docks. But these changes are small, almost imperceptible, the kind of changes that accumulate over hours rather than minutes, and they serve only to emphasize the slow, patient nature of the evening, the way everything happens in its own time, without hurry or concern. The rising tide brings with it a slight change in the water's sound, a fuller, deeper quality to the lapping, as if the water has more weight, more substance, and this change is soothing in its inevitability. The tide will continue to rise for hours yet, reaching its peak in the middle of the night, and then beginning its slow retreat. And this cycle has repeated every day for as long as the harbor has existed, a rhythm so fundamental and reliable that it seems almost miraculous in its regularity. You close your eyes again, surrendering more fully now to the other senses, to the sound and the smell and the feel of the evening. The darkness behind your closed eyelids is complete and soft, and you notice how your other senses become more acute in the absence of sight, how the sound of the water becomes more layered and complex, how the smell of the harbor becomes more distinct and present, how the feeling of the bench beneath you and the cool air against your skin become more noticeable and somehow more real. With your eyes closed, you lose track of time entirely, existing in a continuous present that has no past and no future, only this moment endlessly extending, endlessly renewing itself. You breathe in, you breathe out, and each breath is complete in itself, requiring nothing that came before, promising nothing that will come after. You are simply breathing, simply being, and this simplicity is more profound than any complexity could be, more satisfying than any achievement or accomplishment. The sounds around you seem to grow richer with your eyes closed, more textured and varied. The lapping of the water reveals itself to be not one sound, but many, a chorus of small waves and ripples, each with its own pitch and rhythm, all overlapping and interfacing in patterns of beautiful randomness. The creaking of the boats becomes more distinct, each creak identifiable as coming from a particular boat, a particular piece of wood responding to a particular pressure. Even the silence between sounds becomes more noticeable, more present, and you realize that silence is not the absence of sound but its own quality. its own presence. When you open your eyes again, the stars seem brighter, or perhaps your eyes have simply adjusted further to the darkness, becoming more sensitive to the small amounts of light that reach them. The Milky Way is spectacular now, a broad band of light that seems almost solid, almost as if you could reach up and touch it, and you notice details within it that you did not see before. Darker lanes and brighter clusters, structure and pattern that reveal themselves slowly to patient observation. The lighthouse beam continues its rotation, and you realize that you have fallen into such a deep synchronization with its rhythm that you can predict exactly when it will appear, can sense its approach before you see it, as if your body has internalized this timing and made it part of its own internal rhythms. The beam appears, sweeps across the water, illuminates the mist, passes beyond your field of vision, and disappears, and then there is darkness and waiting, and then the beam appears again, exactly as expected, exactly as it should, and this predictability is deeply comforting. A reminder that some things in the world are reliable and constant. The mist has reached its peak thickness now, or perhaps it has thinned slightly. It is hard to tell, but in either case it seems to have stabilized, no longer rising from the water in visible tendrils, but simply existing as a general softness in the air, a gentle obscuring of vision that makes everything seem distant and dreamlike. The boats are completely invisible now, their presence known only through sound, and the far shore might as well not exist, absorbed completely into the mist and the darkness. The world has contracted to this small space, this pier and the water immediately around it, and everything beyond is suggestion and mystery. You find yourself thinking about sleep, about the warm bed that waits for you somewhere in Harbor Row, about the soft sheets and heavy blankets and the small room with its single window looking out on the water. But these thoughts are abstract and distant, lacking any real pull or urgency, and they fade away again without your having moved or made any decision about when to leave the pier. Sleep will come when it comes, and until then there is only this sitting, this breathing, this patient existence at the end of the pier. Your body has become very still now, so still that you barely feel it, only a vague sense of presence and warmth in the center of the coolness. And your breathing has slowed even further, each breath taking longer, the pause between breaths extending, until you are breathing perhaps only 3 or 4 times per minute, so slowly that you wonder briefly if you are getting enough air, but your body seems content with this pace, seems to know what it needs, and so you trust it and allow the breathing to continue at its own rate, unhurried and complete. The night is complete, whole, perfect in its darkness and stillness and patient continuation. Everything that needed to happen has happened, and everything that will happen is still to come. And in between is this eternal present, this moment that contains all moments, this breath that contains all breaths. You are sitting at the end of a pier in Harbor Row, surrounded by water and mist and darkness, and you are also everywhere and nowhere, existing in a state that has no name, that requires no explanation. That simply is. The stars continue their slow wheel overhead. The lighthouse beam continues its patient rotation. The water continues its gentle lapping, and you continue to sit, breathing slowly, thinking nothing, wanting nothing, being nothing except this quiet presence at the end of the pier, this awareness that observes without judgment, that exists without effort, that simply is and continues to be as the night deepens and the mist thickens and the hours pass unmarked and unmeasured into the depth of the darkness, and the world becomes softer, quieter, slower, until there is almost nothing left except the breathing and the sitting and the gentle presence of the night wrapping around you like a blanket, warm and safe and infinitely patient, holding you in this moment that has no end, only a soft fading into something even quieter, even stiller, even more peaceful, as if the night itself is preparing for sleep, and you with it, together drifting into a darkness that is not empty but full, not cold, but warm, not frightening but welcoming, a darkness that holds and comforts and asks nothing, gives everything, and slowly, so slowly that you cannot mark the moment of transition, the evening becomes the night, and the night becomes something deeper, softer, quieter still, until there is only the gentlest sense of being, of breathing, of existing in this perfect, peaceful moment at the end of the pier in Harbor Row, where the water whispers and the stars shine and the lighthouse keeps its patient watch, and you sit and breathe and are